Well, kia ora and welcome to Ancient Spirits Beacon. This is a very, very special Skype video call. I have with me today Alfred Lambremont Webre. Kia ora, Alfred.
Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be joining you today.
I have to say thank you for making this so easy to organise.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad.
Yeah, well, it's lovely to connect with you. I'm in New Zealand and you're in Vancouver.
Right.
We're
facing each other on opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean, and when I visited and lived briefly in New Zealand, I flew from New Zealand to Vancouver, so I'm kind of in a familiar place here.
Alfred, I wanted to talk to you about, first of all, your website, Exopolitics. I have been subscribed, I think, since last year. I've known about you for a couple of years and been watching you over the last couple of years, but in the last 12 months, I've been really enjoying all the discoveries that you're making.
Oh, good.
And I mean, the burning question for me is how did exopolitics come about? And if you can tell me more about the background and what it is exactly, what you hope to achieve with your website, and who will it benefit?
Yeah, sure. And what I will try to share is the different layers of it and the different dimensions of it, because we live in a dimensional ecology inside of a time-space hologram. And these are all scientific discoveries. And so the development of exopolitics follows that kind of model. And so you'll see how it developed as I sort of unpack how exopolitics developed. Sure. Okay, so very simply, how it developed for me was that toward the end of 1972 in the 20th century, I was the general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of the city of New York. And at that time, I felt that what I would call the positivist paradigm, and that is looking at the Earth as the be-all and end-all, that there were no more intelligent civilizations in the universe than that existed on Earth. We're alone, and that's kind of what at that time was the reigning public paradigm.
Right.
That just didn't work because I was reading a lot of books that were coming out at that time. And so at the beginning of 1973, my boss, who was Mayor John Lindsay, decided to run for U.S. president, and I didn't feel like going forward in politics at that time. And so I asked to meet experts in the multidimensional area. And I was introduced to a professor of experimental psychology who was also an expert on parapsychology, which is the study of psi, or the telepathic, that power of human consciousness that can traverse outside of time and space. In other words, that can do telepathy, which is point-to-point communication, that can do clairvoyance or psychic capacity, which is to be able to see future or past events outside of a particular time-space location. And parapsychology also studies the continuation of human consciousness after bodily death, which is a human belief system that normally now is in the realm of religious belief, but is actually a matter of science, the science of parapsychology. So And he was also an expert in extraterrestrial studies. So I sort of took that route rather than go forward into the political paradigm, you know, getting involved in politics. And for me, that was just more contact sports. You know?
Right, so your awareness was being pulled somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, for me, was the introduction to exopolitics. Because exopolitics, the definition of is exopolitics is a new science, and the definition of exopolitics is the science of relation among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. Let's say it's very much like the science of anthropology, except that anthropology studies the different types of humans, but here on one planet, which is planet Earth. Homo sapiens, Homo capensis, you know, all the different Piltdown man, all those different type of things. And so by that summer, I began to write my first book, the summer of 1973. And I haven't looked back since. I just began to write and move forward. And I did all sorts of activities over the next 30 to 40 years. I mean, this is, 42, 43 years after that. And I've had a very full life. I was director of the Jimmy Carter White House Extraterrestrial Communication Project. And in 1999, I sat down to write a book called Exopolitics, which was like a summary. Oh, here's the new science that I've been doing for the last 35 years.
Right.
So that book was written in 1999, and I put it instantly up on the internet as a free ebooks, so people could tune into it and to also kind of change the thought forms and bring in new thought forms. And then in the year 2005, I brought it out as a regular, book, a paperback book that people could go out and buy, and I could show at conferences. Well, lo and behold, at that point, I was told by a whistleblower from a top secret project named Andrew Bishago that my book had been taken back in time from 2005 back to 1971 by the DARPA, the U.S. Department of Defense, CIA top secret time travel project. So the book that I wrote in 1999, which was published in 2005, called Exopolitics, was actually taken by time travel machine, Tesla-based time travel, and time traveled back to 1971, when I was General Counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration. Now, to make that even more, and to validate from my point of view,
right, because that's quite a far-fetched story to be, about your book, the book that you wrote.
Yeah, and
just for an audience to hear it.
I went through all kind of changes in 2005. I felt as though my very privacy had been invaded, all my thoughts, and here was my book, and all of a sudden they had it back in 1971. What is this? And so then I started going back to 1971 and reframing an anomalous experience that I'd had then, because part of my job then was to go out publicly and speak to the people of New York about environmental protection. Protecting the air quality, the water quality, noise abatement, solid waste, all of these things that we do to protect the environment, against all the excesses of urbanization. So I remembered that there was this one anomalous talk that I had to give in 1971, where usually I would talk to students and housewives, which are the most enthusiastic people about environmental protection. And I would go out and talk to them, and they were all gung-ho. Well, I had an invitation, and when the person called up to pick me up to take me to the talk, he was a man dressed in a conventional suit. He looked more like a government official than uh, an environmentalist. And we went in his car for about 3 hours and plus, and we got to this nondescript office building, and we went up a flight of stairs, and there were 50 other men who looked like, we call them suits, men in suits, kind of nondescript with coats and ties or just with shirts and ties. And I've been around long enough because I've been down in the Cuban Revolution, and because I'd grown up in Cuba, and I, know all the stuff with spy versus spy, Cuba versus Castro versus U.S., and I had been involved in what I call public interest counterintelligence.
Right. So you were being watched anyway.
Yeah. And I said, these guys are agents. These guys are government officials, and they aren't normal government officials. They're not from the motor vehicles agency. These guys are spooks. Because I knew what spooks looked like. And they were all kind of looking at me, right? And so I decided to play it straight. And I just gave them my standard stump speech on protecting the environment. But during the talk, some of them would be smirking at me, trying to get me off my game. But I just went ahead. I knew that there was something there was something off about it, because cognitive dissonance kicks in. And so that day always stood with me. They gave me a mug, and the mug was for the name of an organization that didn't exist, because I looked it up afterward. So it was like a phony meeting under an assumed name, and it was like spy versus spy. And so I found out 35 years later, in 2005, or almost 40 years later, when my book was published by the whistleblower that had been part of that project and had seen my book back in 1971 in the company of others, that those were probably CIA and DARPA and Department of Defense officials who had seen my book back then, who had probably time travel surveyed me now at this time, which they can do. They can either watch you on a chronovisor, which is like a television set that can dial into either two-dimensional, like a regular TV set, or three-dimensional, and they can dial into time-space coordinates, because the time-space it's like a virtual reality, and that's what we live in. We live in a virtual reality that has been constructed by higher intelligence, and we're deeper souls that incarnate into it, and we inhabit our avatars. Our avatar is like Alfred, so I'm just inhabiting and animating this avatar called Alfred, and gaining soul development and moral experiences by it.
In the school of life.
Yeah, and so, but now with time travel, technology, they can either track you through a chronovisor, which is like a TV set, or they can hack into your reality through time travel machines. So I can actually have a time traveler who will be sent right in here, can walk in my door and be looking at me. And he can be sent from 1971, or he can be sent from, or he or she can be sent from the future, or a chronovisor can hack into my reality, and they can be watching our conversation right now and can be recording it.
That's highly likely.
Yeah, because it's all dimensions, and it's all nothing but electromagnetic signals, right? So that's how I first discovered and really came to terms with that we live in this dimensional ecology, and that it's all electromagnetic signals, and that there's a vast secret bureaucracy using secret quantum access technology that accesses all of this, and that's how they control us politically.
Right. Well, I mean, that begs the question: who in your opinion is this dark force group? These time travelers, and what is the technology they have? And I mean, why are they bringing stuff from the future back into the past? I mean, it's all mind bender stuff, information that you're talking about. But
well, we are. That's a question that has multiple answers.
Okay.
And to answer at the broadest level, at the systems level, which is when I wrote my most recent book, which is out now, my book on the omniverse, I sort of stepped back and I said, well, let me step back and just try and describe the whole system that we're in. We're trying to say, without saying who's right and who's wrong, who's bad and who's good, let's just look at the whole system. And what we discovered there was that we can say that the omniverse, we discovered what we call an omniverse equation. And the equation that came out of a lot of hard scientific data is that the omniverse equals all the universes of the multiverse. Because first, humans discover the universe, and then they discover the multiverse. It was the novelist William James who first used the term the multiverse in the 1890s. And that means the sum of all the universes. And we'll talk about how many universes there are in the multiverse. And then there's the omniverse. Well, the omniverse equals all the universes of the multiverse plus the spiritual dimensions. And what the spiritual dimensions equals is all the dimensions of the intralife or the afterlife, which is where the intelligent civilization of souls are based, plus the spiritual entities, plus source. Some people call source God. There are many different names for that. And so once we were able to put down that equation, then we saw all the different parts of it. And the purpose, what it is that from a lot of replicable data, we're able to prove that what it is that the intelligent civilization of souls plus spiritual entities plus source, that whole spiritual dimension, designs and creates all of the universes together. They co-create all of the universes. They co-create all of the galaxies and solar systems. They co-create and design all of the races, intelligent races in it, like Homo sapiens on planet Earth, that's us. And they do it, the main mission of the universes is to design vehicles for soul development. In other words, for the souls, the intelligent community of souls in the spiritual dimensions to incarnate into for soul development. Everything has that purpose. And also between incarnations, the individual souls actually come into the universes in the dimensional ecology and work on it. We actually work on it by creating parts of universes and tweaking the universes and creating solar systems and creating different species and, prettying up planets and bringing all kinds of vegetation. We're actually creator gods. And so it's a very complex set of machinery. And to give you an idea, this is all information that we've been able to put in this first ever book on the omniverse. Bring it together.
That's your book, The Dimensional Ecology of the Omniverse?
Yeah, exactly. And people who want to get it, that you can go to exopolitics.com, you can go to amazon.com, uh, and uh, and so, for example, there have been recently two scientists at Stanford who have estimated the number of universes in the multiverse. This is just to get a scale of what we're dealing with. And they said,
okay, what are we dealing with exactly?
yeah,
Lay it down for us.
and they said that the number of universes in the multiverse is so large that we as humans can't cope with that number. But if we were to write it out, say in 12-point type on a computer, that number would stretch for more than 260 million miles. That's how large that number is, of the number of universes.
And we're only talking about universes, not multiverses.
No, universes, and we're in one of those universes. So that's how large the game is. And we on Earth, we're in kind of an afflicted part of our universe, an afflicted solar system in our galaxy, on an afflicted and isolated quarantine planet. So when we incarnate here, we think that we're so isolated, we don't even know that the rest of the universe is populated, except for the ancient civilizations who still have it in their racial memory and in their ancient history. All of the indigenous have that, and I'm sure perhaps the Maori may have that in their legends. I know that the Aboriginal have that. I know that the Native Americans who came over the land bridge between Russia and Alaska, and they populated all of North America and South America and became all of the natives of North and South America. They have that.
It's a deeper awareness or connection to are you saying an ancient code of understanding?
To the awareness that we live in a multidimensional living cosmos.
That's when science starts crossing over to the spiritual side of things, which is what you're theorizing that the omniverse is all about.
Yes. And so what we've been able to do in this book, which is actually prophesized for this time, is to bring together and integrate science and spirituality. We show how what normally are thought of as spiritual realities like reincarnation or the life of the soul or the reality of source are actually scientific terms that can be most readily understood through science. And so that's what we've begun to do. And
that's the mainstream language, isn't it? Science.
Yeah.
That's our universal mainstream language, whereas spirituality and that language is a lot with the indigenous communities around the world, but that's coming out even more. I've found in the last year, that shift toward spirituality and that combination of spirituality and science or new science.
Yes, and so this is what I found to be very, very hopeful. Now, working out from that, because part of the work in developing the omniverse equation and looking at what universes are composed of as holographic realities and time-space holograms, certain components of the universes.
Yes, well, you talked about the hologram world when we first started talking, so it's lovely that you've come back to this hologram concept. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. And so out of that, we know, and this was proved in a lot of the time science experiments by the DARPA, Department of Defense, and DARPA time science and time travel experiments, and that is that the time space hologram that we inhabit, that we live in, is composed of multiple timelines, and that we're actually moving on a timeline as a collective here on Earth, as a human collective on Earth. And that what we were able to study and examine is that as of December 21st, 2012, we shifted timelines. The timeline that we're all collectively traveling on shifted from a more catastrophic timeline to a more positive timeline. And whereas before it was prophesized that we would have many Earth cataclysms on Earth because we were on a catastrophic timeline. So there were many prophets that were prophesizing a catastrophic timeline. For example, the American psychic Edgar Cayce, I wrote a book about that was published in 1974 called The Age of Cataclysm, where I studied his psychic remote viewings, where he saw a global coastal event that would happen early in the 21st century, where what that means is that you would have huge tsunamis where all of the coastal cities in the earth would be destroyed. For example, in that you would have Auckland, you would have Sydney, the Sydney Opera House would be destroyed. All of that, all of the coastal cities of California, New York, all that would be under the ocean. Japan would go under the ocean because it was on a catastrophic timeline. But we shifted as of the end of the Mayan calendar, which are other indigenous races. And there's some evidence that the Mayan calendar was actually a time science calendar, and they were time scientists. And so the new timeline that came in is a holographic timeline that is not catastrophic, that was creating war, disease, crime, and poverty, but rather it's creating a positive reality because it's based on unity consciousness, which is we are one, and it's not based on duality consciousness, which is I win, you lose, because the controllers of the planet under the catastrophic timeline were operating under I win, you lose, and they were creating war, disease, crime, and poverty, which is what you create in I win, you lose. That's the products. War, disease, crime, and poverty is all about I win, you lose. So we shifted. So now all of the false flag operations of the Matrix elite, this cabal, they haven't been able to get World War III off the ground. There were catastrophes that were prophesied for June of 2013 by large-scale military-trained remote viewers. None of them happened. There was a U.S. Department of Defense, CIA chronovisor probe from 1971 that found the U.S. Supreme Court building under 100 feet of brackish water in June of 2013. Well, that didn't happen. Why? Because we shifted on to a new timeline in 2001. So we're on a positive timeline. So the objective circumstance is that we've now shifted on to a new timeline, and we have 7 billion people that are a bit confused because a lot of them think that we're still under the old timeline, And we still have the Matrix elite trying to get their wars off and causing confusion. So people don't know if we're in paradise or on hell. You know?
So this confusion that you're talking about, is this part of the old paradigm, the way of thinking, and is the new timeline, the positive timeline, more about those that have plugged into some universal consciousness and are acceptable for positive things to happen and aren't so reactive to the negative things that are trying to bring us down? People, I mean, around the globe.
And that is exactly. Now, what we've done is to write a 27-page paper, which your audience can access at positivefuture.info. And they can access what we call the positive future equation, which is positive future equals positive timeline plus unity consciousness. And that 27-page paper is actually the first chapter of my next book, which I'm working on now, but it's the next book after the Omniverse book, which is how do we land all that positive stuff here right now in our reality, in our sector of the universe.
Are you going to make us wait for the book?
What?
Are you going to make us wait for the book?
Well, no, that's why I put it online for free. So you can just go there now and get into the positive equation, and the proof is all there in the 27 pages. So you can jump on that and internalize that, and you can navigate your life and, just see that, oh my God, we're actually landing paradise on Earth. The timeline has shifted, and we're in a positive timeline. And it's not necessary to worry about whether or not, Planet X is coming, because that's absurd. It's not going to happen. They can't get World War III off the ground. All of this is from a prior timeline.
Alfred, I feel like some of the content in your new book will be devoted to, I guess, looking back at all the prophecies from the indigenous communities and going back to that old way of thinking, whether it be, the Mayans and the Hopi and most of the other American Indian tribes, definitely with the Māori culture and the Pacific Island, all across the world with indigenous cultures. There are philosophies there, very basic and easy and positive ways of living.
Yes, and especially coming out of all of those cultures were the cosmologies, because they really lived their sense of cosmology. How was the cosmos born, and it's living, and how do I figure in it? And everything made sense, and it was all positive. And so what we've done in this book was just update that and bring the existing science in to show that it all makes sense. That it's not a negative timeline; it's a positive timeline.
Can I ask who was responsible for the initiation of the new positive timeline? How did that happen? Was that just something that was waiting at that particular time, on the timeline, or is it something that we did together as a human race, or all the positive thoughts and consciousness? How was it created? How was the positive time created?
That's a key question, and and of course there's an interactive component to it, and there are many time scientists who study that, like Dr. Carl Johan Kalaman. The overarching prime mover of it is that it's the basic infrastructure of our universe, and it's the interdimensional, as of December 21st, 2012, the interdimensional portal at the core of our universe, which is a singularity, started broadcasting waves of unity consciousness, moving away from intermittent waves of duality consciousness. So you can call that, quote, the mind of God, if you want to. It's just, it's signals from source. It's basically, it's like
a divine intervention.
Yeah, that's it. That's about the size of it.
We need to get Earth back on track.
Because it's structural. It's like the whole game changes. So we're putting our end in by paying attention, by moving ourselves and expanding ourselves to get into unity consciousness and to get into the positive timeline. But, and it's a shift in the whole infrastructure, and it's a shift in the entire frequency. We're surrounded by unity consciousness, and it's up to us to be open to it. That's the reality of it.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. How does the Hopi Blue Kachina fit into this new positive timeline, or that shift in 2012?
It's all part of this. It's all part of the shift that occurs at 2012 into a frequency ascension and elevation into unity consciousness, into a new frequency, into the new structural positive timeline. And the sources probably of the Hopi cosmology, the Mayan cosmology, the Aztec calendar, other indigenous calendars. It's all a big universe clockwork. And so
it's genius, really, when you think about it.
Yeah. So that's basically what we're dealing with. And if my own experience is that if it were not for that large infrastructure shift, I mean, that's what's doing it, and our part is really to acknowledge it and just to accept it and to participate in it.
So this is all tied into your exopolitics.
Yes, right. If you look at it, exopolitics is what happens inside the universes. In other words, exopolitics describes how extraterrestrials and interdimensionals get along, and the relationships and extraterrestrials and interdimensionals are all part of the exophenotypes, all the species that exist inside the universes that are the avatars that the souls incarnate into. Did I manage to communicate that?
I think so. I mean, it's all pretty, deep information, and I don't think it's something that you can, a concept that, you can wrap your mind around, in one session. I think it becomes a practice, and just, keeping up with the new research, the groundbreaking research that is coming through.
Good.
But, I mean, it's enough just for the initiation of this information to come through, and to have be able to have interviews like this where, I get to speak to you, and then you get to speak to the audience here in the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to make available a copy of our book to you. So after our program, I'll send it along, and that'll, we'll be able to open up some more dialogue.
Oh, that's really lovely. Thank you. That's lovely. Of course. So we've talked about the positive timelines. And you mentioned before that the portal opened around 2012. Is the portal still open, and much longer is it going to stay open?
Yeah, well, the i.e. Galaxy, in other words, solar systems, universes have like our universe has at least 500 billion galaxies in it. And then each of the galaxies has so many solar systems. And each of those are identical in a certain way. A universe is a large hologram. And then within it, you've got all these sub-holograms that we'll call galaxies. And each of those galaxies has a black hole, and the black hole is an interdimensional portal that you can come in and out of. It's a singularity that you can come in, the energy can come in and out of this interdimensional portal, in and out of that galaxy. And then within that galaxy, there are multiple solar systems. And the interdimensional portal in and out of our solar system is our sun, which is the singularity. And then at the universe level, the universe has a singularity, which is the interdimensional portal, which is the entry and exit in and out of the universe, out into the other universes, out into the multiverse. And this is all the created virtual reality that's a creation of the spiritual dimensions that they create so that they'll have something to incarnate into.
But how do we access that technology? Do we need to access that technology? How do we tune into it? I mean, I know there are a lot of people right now out there that before you mentioned there are a lot of confused people out there, but right now it seems a crucial time when people could go, this way or that way. A negative, stay with the current paradigm, or go with the new upgraded paradigm.
Right.
So what are those things that people can practice or do to tap into the positive timeline? If they're right there on that cusp, what can they do to shift their consciousness to get on the positive timeline?
Sure. And there are many practices that way. What we attempted to do, our approach with this book, was to put together in one kind of easy guide how the whole system works from a scientific point of view, so that by reading this, it takes all the mystery away. It makes it transparent, and you see how the whole system works. And then you can use once one has understanding at the level of mind, then you can begin to traverse some more of the dimensional levels, either through meditation, or through, one can have interdimensional experiences. Throughout my work, say over the past 42, 43 years, since 1973, which is when I really began to work at the multidimensional level, I've had direct face-to-face interactions with enormous multidimensional spiritual beings that have interacted with me and kind of helped me along and said what I'm supposed to do and what I will be doing. I've had direct interactions with large-scale spacecraft that are like a half a kilometer to a kilometer across. I mean, these are exact measures because they were measured by large groups of people that caught it on film, and where I've had telepathic communication with the people on the spacecraft. And all of that, I now have a map, because I've read how the system works, that I can map, the multidimensional being that interacted with me. I know exactly where they're from and how to, and we have a telepathic interaction that was very important to me in 1973, in February, when I was first starting off. That, that's kind of like a blueprint for me, and I know that this is real, but now I know more or less where that being's from because I've written the map of the whole place. And then if we go out and we have intention experiments where a group of people will start meditating and calling in interdimensional extraterrestrials, flying saucers, and they begin to appear, then we know where they come from. They come from the next dimension over, but they're inside of the universe. They're not from the spiritual dimension. So you begin to know multi-dimensionally where all the different things are from. And what this does is that by reading this book, I think it's called capacity building. It's like having a map or a guide so you know what's what and where's where, so that you don't get mystified by paranormal phenomena, but you know what it is. And the afterlife, oh, that's another dimension. Right. You can, anyway.
No, it's great stuff, in fact, because, over the years we've been led to believe that extraterrestrial life is, in the movies we see them as the aliens that are coming to abduct us and do wild experiments. And over time we have a fear. Some of us have fears of alien life form. Some of us don't believe it because it's all science fiction from, through movies and books. But I guess, again, it's shifting into that positive timeline and getting rid of that old mental paradigm that how we used to think, and actually accepting new possibilities, like being able to connect with alien life forms and crafts.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and a lot of that is happening in the New Zealand, Australia area. And in fact, one of the chapters in the book is with a very significant contactee who's head of UFO New Zealand, Suzanne Hansen, and it's her story.
I do hope to interview Suzanne at some point.
Yeah. So you're actually in an area in New Zealand where a lot of this significant interaction is happening.
I'm aware of this. Well, before we sign off, Alfred, I'd love for you to share any messages or insights that our viewers can will be of value to our viewers. Do you have any guidance or any messages?
Well, I would just say to really stay out of fear. Always press the love button, never press the fear button, and to use common sense, and to release, if you wish, start becoming familiar with terms like the omniverse, terms like the multiverse, terms like the universe, because these are actually the cosmologies of the ancient indigenous cultures of your land, which are now being reborn with the additional structures of science, which don't take away from them. They mutually reinforce each other.
That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Alfred. Thank you so much for sharing your time and again for making time. I appreciate that you're a busy person with your writing and your website, and also you have your web series that people can subscribe to on YouTube. The last time I checked, there was nearly you have nearly 30,000 subscribers around the globe. And did you mention that you have had overall about 4 million views?
Yes, over 4 million views.
Good work, Alfred.
Thank you.
Very good work. Thank you again. And from New Zealand, I'd like to say that no matter where you are in the world, don't forget that love is the universal language. Kia ora, ka kite, aroha nui.
Thank you so much. Thank you.